Helen died on a Tuesday, October the 3rd, 2017. I know the date the way I know my own birthday, the way I know the day David was born, the way I know the day this house was finished, and I put the last board down and stood in the kitchen and looked out at the cedars and thought, I built this for us. She died in the afternoon. I was there. I'd been there all morning. And then I stepped out into the hallway for a few minutes. I've told that story before, the way I couldn't stay in the room at the very end, the way David was the one who held her hand. And when I came back in, she was gone. The nurse was there. The room was very quiet. I drove home alone. The children were still at the hospital. I told them I needed a little time. I drove the 40 minutes back to Bangor in the October cold, and I came into the house and I sat in my chair. And that was the beginning of the hardest thing I've ever done. Not losing her, living after. I'm 82 years old. My name is Walter, and today I want to talk to the person who just lost their spouse, or who lost them recently. The person who is, right now, in the place I was in that October, in that chair, in that silence, with that weight. I want to talk about some of the things I did in those first months that I wish I hadn't done. Not because they were terrible decisions, most of them weren't, but because I've watched other people do the same things, and I've seen what those things cost. And I think if someone had told me plainly in October of 2017, I would have saved myself some of what followed. This isn't advice from a counselor or a grief professional. I'm not qualified to be either of those things. This is just what I found, what I did wrong, what the wrong cost me, and what I'd tell the person in that chair if I could sit across from them the way I'm sitting here now. 7 things, said plainly from someone who's been through it. Sit with me. The fire's going. I have time. The first thing, stop pretending to be all right for the people around you. I started doing this within the first week. Helen died on a Tuesday, and by the following Monday, I was telling people I was doing okay. Not in a lying way. I didn't feel like I was lying exactly. I felt like it was the thing you were supposed to say. The thing that let the conversation move on, that let the other person feel better about your situation, that signaled to the people who loved you that they didn't need to worry so much. I'm doing okay. I'm managing, taking it one day at a time. I'm all right. I said these things to David, to Susan, to the neighbors, to the men at the hardware store who'd known Helen for 30 years and who asked how I was doing with a particular gentleness that told me they already knew I wasn't all right. I said them anyway. The problem with that, and I didn't see it until much later, was that it cut me off from help at the moment I most needed it. The people who loved me took me at my word. They were already feeling uncertain about how to help. Grief makes people uncertain. They don't know what to say. They're afraid of saying the wrong thing. And when I told them I was all right, most of them believed it enough to step back a little, to give me space, to not push. And I needed them to push. I needed someone to come over and make me sit down and eat something real. I needed someone to notice that I was wearing the same shirt 3 days in a row and that the dishes were piling up. I needed someone to ask me how I was really doing, and to mean it, and to wait out the silence until the true answer came. But I'd told them I was all right, so they gave me space. David came up about 6 weeks after Helen died. He saw me. I think I looked worse than I'd expected him to find me. He went to the grocery store without saying anything and came back and made me a stew. He made me sit at the table, at a real table, not at the counter. He didn't say much, but he stayed for 3 days. That was the most helpful thing anyone did in those first months. And it happened because David looked past what I'd been saying and saw what was actually there. If you've just lost your spouse, stop performing the okayness. Not to every person. There are people you don't owe your grief to, people in passing who don't need the full truth of it. But to the people who love you and who are genuinely asking, let them know. Let them see. Say, I am not all right. I don't know how to do this. I need help figuring out the next part. Most of them want to help. Most of them have been wanting to help and haven't known how, because you've been telling them you're fine. Give them the way in. I want to say something more about this because I think the performing of okayness does something beyond just cutting off help. It does something to you internally that compounds the grief. When you tell people you're all right and you're not, you end up in a kind of double grief. The grief of the loss and the grief of not being able to say the grief. The two of them together are heavier than the first one alone. I noticed this in myself around month 2. I'd gotten into a habit of saying I was doing okay, and the habit had become a kind of persona, the man who was handling it. And maintaining that persona required energy I didn't have. I was using what little I had, the reserves that should have been going toward actually grieving, actually processing, actually eating and sleeping and getting through the days. I was using that on the performance. And the performance didn't help anyone. I know that now. The children were not actually reassured. They were worried anyway. They could see what I looked like. They could hear the quality of my voice on the phone. They knew more than I was telling them. My telling them I was fine didn't make them feel better. It just made them feel like they couldn't ask. Helen would have seen through it immediately. She had that particular gift. She could tell the difference between Walter, who was fine, and Walter, who was using the energy of a man who was fine. She'd have come and found me in the shop, and she'd have put her hand on my arm, and she'd have said, Walter, how are you actually? There's nobody here now to ask that question, so I've had to learn to answer it for myself. To notice when the performance is happening, to say, out loud or just in my head, I'm not all right. That's actually where I am today. And then to tell someone real, who can hold it. I almost sold the house, not because I wanted to exactly, but because in the second month after Helen died, I couldn't be in the house. The house was too much. Helen was everywhere in it. In the kitchen in the morning, in the bedroom at night, in the garden that nobody was tending, in the shop where I couldn't seem to get any work done because I kept looking up, expecting to hear her voice somewhere in the house, and the silence where her voice should have been was worse than anything else. I started looking at smaller places, apartments in Bangor, a condominium that Susan had mentioned that was near a good hospital and had a warden on the property, though Susan didn't use that word. I had a conversation with a real estate agent. This was probably 3 months after Helen died, about what the house might fetch. And then I stopped. Not because I'd made a clear, reasoned decision to stop, but because David came up for a weekend, and I told him what I'd been doing, and he got very quiet in the way he does when he's worried, and he said, Pop, wait, don't do this yet. Don't make any big decisions right now. Give it a year. Just give it a year. He was right. A year later, I didn't want to move. The house had become, in those 12 months, something different than it had been in that second month. The presence of Helen in it, which had felt initially like an unbearable haunting, had become a kind of company. The house knew her. It had 50 years of her in it. The particular way the boards creaked on the landing. The garden that I'd started tending again, imperfectly, after that first terrible spring. The green cup she'd bought at the fair in Bar Harbor in 1989 that I use every single morning for my coffee. If I'd sold the house in month 3, I would have lost all of that. I would have traded 50 years of Helen for an apartment that knew nobody. And it wasn't just the house. In those first months, I had impulses to do other things I'm glad I didn't do. To get rid of her clothes too fast. I gave some away too early and grieved the giving, the way I've told you about before. To restructure my finances in ways that looked sensible in the fog, but would have cost me later. To say things to the children about inheritance and arrangements that, looking back, I should have waited to say. The fog of grief distorts judgment, not in obvious ways. You don't feel foggy necessarily. You feel like you're thinking clearly because you're thinking hard. But the thinking is happening under a weight you can't fully account for. And the decisions that come out of it are often not the decisions you'd make 12 months later. Wait. Whatever the big thing is, the house, the finances, the arrangement with the family, the move closer to the children, the major change. Wait a year. Mark it in a notebook. Look at it again in 12 months. Most of the time, the decision will be clearer then, and you'll be grateful you waited. The third thing, stop staying in the bedroom. I mean this in two ways. The obvious one first. After Helen died, I stopped sleeping in our bedroom. Not right away. For the first few weeks I tried. But the bed was wrong. The room was wrong. Everything in it was wrong in a specific, physical way that I couldn't reason myself out of. So I moved to the couch. I brought a blanket, the crocheted one that Helen had made, and I slept in the living room for about a year. I've talked about this before, about my granddaughter Lily telling me to get a smaller blanket so I didn't notice how big the bed was, and about the single-sized quilt I bought and put on Helen's side, and how that helped, eventually, get me back in the room. But what I want to say here is about the broader staying in the bedroom, the retreat into the house, the way grief, in its early stages, wants you to stop moving, to close down, to stay in the smallest, most familiar space and not venture out of it. I stopped going to the hardware store. I stopped going to the diner on Saturday mornings where I'd had coffee with Bob for 30 years. I stopped answering the phone unless it was David or Susan. I stopped going to the shop. I stopped going outside much at all in those first winter months except for the essentials. And the world, which I'd retreated from, started to feel far away. After a few months of staying in, the outside started feeling like something I had to push through rather than something I was naturally part of. The longer I stayed in, the harder it became to go out. What got me moving again, and this was slow, this took months, was small things. Not dramatic ventures out into the world, small ones. The chickadee at the feeder in that winter of 2020, which made me get up to put the seed out, which made me put my coat on, which made me stand outside for 5 minutes in the cold, which was the most I'd been outside in 2 weeks, and which felt, for those 5 minutes, like being alive. Small things. That's what starts the movement back. If you're in the very early days, I'm not telling you to force yourself out before you're ready. The staying in, at first, is what the grief needs. But after the first weeks, try to put one small thing outside the house every day. Not a big thing. A walk to the mailbox, the feeder filled. 1 cup of coffee at the diner on a quiet morning when you can sit in the back and not be expected to talk to anyone. The world is still there. It will still be there when you're ready. But don't wait so long to go back to it that it starts to feel foreign. The fourth thing, stop expecting the grief to follow a schedule. Everybody who has ever lost someone has heard some version of the stages of grief. The idea that grief moves through defined phases, one after another, in a more or less predictable sequence until you arrive at acceptance and can get on with things. I'm not going to argue with the professionals who came up with that framework. It probably has truth in it. But what I want to say is that it can do real damage if you take it too literally. If you start timing yourself against it, expecting that by a certain point you should be further along than you are. Feeling, when you're not where the schedule says you should be, that something is wrong with you. That your grief is excessive. that you're failing somehow at the work of moving on. I did this. Around the 18-month mark, I started feeling like I should be further along. Other people who'd been widowed seemed to be managing better from the outside. The neighbors had expected, gently, that I might be doing more. The children were relieved when I had a good week, which meant they'd noticed the bad ones. And I started to feel like the grief was too large, still too present, and that I was somehow doing it wrong. That feeling was not useful. It added shame to the grief, which is a terrible combination. Grief alone is survivable. Grief with shame is the thing that breaks people. Here's what I've come to understand. At 82, 7 years after Helen died. The grief doesn't end. It doesn't resolve into acceptance and close like a book. It changes shape. It becomes something you carry rather than something that carries you. But it stays. And the stain is not a failure. It's the evidence of what the love was. You grieve as large as you loved. And we loved large, Helen and I, for 54 years. I'm still grieving her, in a quiet, manageable way that doesn't stop my days. But still, 7 years out. And that's not wrong. That's just the truth. If you're in the first year, and the grief is larger than you thought it would be, and it's not following any schedule you've read about, and other people seem to be expecting you to be further along, please hear this. There's no schedule. There's no right pace. There's no correct way to carry a loss. The only measure that matters is whether you can function, whether you're eating, sleeping, taking basic care of yourself, maintaining some thread of connection with the people who love you. If you can do those things, even imperfectly, you're doing it right. The rest is your timeline, nobody else's. I want to add something about the anniversaries, because nobody warned me about the anniversaries, and I think somebody should. The first anniversary of Helen's death, October the 3rd, 2018, was harder than the death itself. Or not harder exactly, but different hard. The death had been terrible in a way that was too large to hold all at once. The anniversary was the grief that had been organizing itself for a year, coming to a particular point. David came up. I'd asked him to. We went to the cemetery in the morning. I don't go often. The cemetery isn't where she is for me. She's in this house, and in the garden, and in Susan's voice. But on the first anniversary, we went. And we stood there, and we didn't say much. And then we came home, and I made the potato soup from her recipe card. The second anniversary was quieter, but still hard. The third was different again. 7 years out, the anniversary is something I observe privately, with intention. I take the sweater from the cedar chest. I make the soup. I sit with the fire in the evening, and I think about her. And I let the day be what it is, a day set apart. Not a day to push through or to be especially okay. A day to hold her. The birthdays are also hard. Hers in particular, March 14th. She would have been 80 this year. I thought about that, about who she would have been at 80, about the things she would have said about the lupines coming up this spring, about the conversations we would have had in the mornings, in this house, at this table. Give yourself the anniversaries. Don't try to make them ordinary. Let them be what they are. Days when the loss is closer to the surface. Days when you take the sweater out. That's not a step backward. That's the love continuing to know its shape. I've told this story before, but I'm going to tell it again because I think it matters and because I wish someone had told it to me in October of 2017. About 3 weeks after Helen died, a neighbor woman came over. kind woman, well-meaning. She'd lost her husband 2 years before, and she told me what had helped her. She said, "Walter, the sooner you clear out her things, the better. Get it over with, like pulling off a bandage. You'll feel better when it's done." I let her help me. We spent an afternoon going through Helen's closet, her drawers, her things. We bagged up her dresses and her cardigans and her good wool coat that she wore to church, her shoes, some of the things from the dresser, 2 trips to the Catholic thrift store in Bangor. I came home and I stood in the bedroom and I realized what I'd done. I'd given away the smell of her. Her cardigans had had her smell in them. The lavender soap she used, something underneath that was just Helen. I'd given that away to strangers. Permanently. There was no getting it back. For months after, I'd wake up and think about those cardigans, about where they were, who was wearing them, whether whoever had bought them at the thrift store had any idea what they were wearing. Don't let anyone rush you. Not the kind neighbor, not the well-meaning friend who's read something about clearing out possessions and moving forward. Not even the children, who may have their own reasons for wanting certain things dealt with. Their things are still their things. For as long as you need them to be, there is no expiration date on that. I still have one of Helen's sweaters, the blue one, with the buttons shaped like little shells. It's in the cedar chest. I take it out sometimes, in February when the cold is deep, and I miss her with a particular intensity. It smells like cedar now, not lavender. That's been gone for years. But it's the sweater she wore, the buttons she buttoned, the shoulders that held her shoulders, and sometimes that's enough. Keep what you need to keep, for as long as you need to keep it. The clearing out can happen on your schedule, at your pace, with your hands, not anyone else's. The 6th thing. Stop trying to feel what you think you should feel. This one took me a long time to understand, because it's subtle, and because the thing you think you should feel and the thing you're actually feeling can look very similar from the outside. In the first weeks after Helen died, I thought I should feel devastated, and I did feel devastated. That wasn't the problem. The problem came later, maybe 6 months in, when I started feeling other things alongside the grief, things that surprised me, things that didn't match my idea of what proper mourning looked like. I felt, sometimes, relieved. Not relieved that she was gone, that's not what I mean. Relieved that her suffering was over. She'd been sick for 2.5 years. The last months had been hard. There had been days in that final stretch where I couldn't tell anymore whether I was hoping the end would come or dreading it, and both feelings were present at once, and neither of them felt like the right feeling for a husband to have. After she died, when the suffering was finally finished, I felt something lift, some tension I'd been carrying for 2 years. And then I felt guilty for feeling the lift, because it felt like it meant I was glad she was gone, which wasn't true, but the feeling was there, and it felt wrong to have it. I also felt angry, not often, not loudly, but underneath things, angry at her for dying, angry at the ordinary unfairness of it. 54 years, and then she was gone, and I was still here, without her, in this house, in October. That anger felt shameful, too. You're not supposed to be angry at someone you lost. You're supposed to be sad. Grief is supposed to be sad. But grief is not just sad. Grief is the whole weight of what a person was to you, and all the feelings that go with that, love and sadness and relief and anger and gratitude and loneliness and, sometimes, unexpected humor, like the day I made the potato soup from Helen's recipe card and I put in too much salt and I thought, Helen, you left the instructions clear enough and I still couldn't follow them. And I laughed. I actually laughed. In my kitchen, 6 months after she died, at a pot of soup. And it felt like her. Whatever you're feeling, it's probably the right feeling for where you are. The relief, the anger, the unexpected laughter, the particular sadness that comes at 3 in the morning, and the different particular sadness that comes at supper time when you set 1 plate instead of 2. All of it is grief. All of it is love looking for where to go. Don't police the feelings. Let them come. Let them be what they are. There's one more feeling I want to name, because I think it might be yours, and because I think it needs to be named. About 4 months after Helen died, I realized that part of what I was feeling was something like freedom. Not the good kind of freedom, the bad kind, the kind that feels like exposure. For 54 years, I had a person who knew where I was and when to expect me. I had a person who would notice if I didn't come in at the usual time. I had a person whose presence in the house meant the house was a home, meant I was accountable to someone, meant my days had a shape because her days had a shape, and the two were intertwined. And then she was gone, and the days had no shape. I could eat at any hour, or not eat at all. I could stay in the shop until midnight, or not go to the shop at all. I could make any decision, or no decision. Nobody would notice. Nobody was waiting. That feeling of exposure, of being unmoored from the accountability of a shared life, felt shameful in a way I didn't expect. Because I'd spent my whole marriage sometimes chafing against the accountability, sometimes thinking, privately, what it would be like to have more independence, to not have to say where I was going or when I'd be back. And then I had all the independence I'd ever privately thought about wanting, and I hated it. It felt like being lost at sea. I don't know if you're feeling that, but if you are, if there's something in you that looks like relief at the freedom and immediately feels guilty for looking like relief, that's real, and it's not shameful, and it doesn't mean you didn't love them. It means you were human, inside a life that was shared, and the ending of the sharing left you exposed in ways you hadn't anticipated. That exposure is its own kind of grief. Let it be named. Stop being alone with it. I don't mean stop living alone. I live alone. I've lived alone for 7 years, and I've found my way through it to something that is, most days, genuinely all right. Living alone is not the same as being alone with your grief. What I mean is this. After Helen died, I stopped talking about what was actually happening inside me. I'd talk to David and Susan, but I'd talk around the grief rather than into it. I'd talk about the practical things, the house, the finances, what to do with Helen's garden, whether to keep the car. I'd talk about how she'd been at the end, what the hospital had said, the logistics of the memorial service. But I didn't tell them what it was actually like inside the house, what I was thinking about at 3 in the morning, how much I missed her laugh, the particular daily grief of mornings when I'd make 2 cups of coffee by habit and then have to pour the second one out. I held all of that to myself, partly because I didn't want to upset them, partly because I wasn't sure they could hold it, partly because articulating it felt like making it more real, and it was already as real as I could stand. What changed, and it changed slowly over a few years, mostly through the Thursday phone calls with Susan, was that I started actually telling the truth. Not all of it at once, in small amounts, a little more each time. Susan would ask how I was doing, really, and instead of saying fine, I'd say, I've been having a hard week. And she'd say, tell me. And I would. And she could hold it. She was sad for me, and she said so. But she could hold it. She didn't break. She didn't immediately start trying to fix it. She just held it, the way Helen used to hold things. Quietly, without judgment, without urgency. That was when the weight started to be bearable. Not because it got smaller, but because I wasn't carrying it entirely alone. There are things I've carried alone that I should have shared sooner. Not with everyone. You don't owe the full truth of your grief to everyone who asks, but to one person, to the person who can hold it, the child who has more capacity than you think, the old friend who has been through something similar and who won't be destroyed by your honesty, the grief counselor or the pastor or whoever it is that can sit across from you and say, tell me, and mean it. Find that person. If you haven't found them yet, find them. Tell them the true thing. Let them carry some of it with you. You don't have to do this alone. And doing it alone doesn't make it better. It just makes it lonelier. The fires burn down to coals. The evening is almost gone. Outside, the October dark is the same dark it was on the night Helen died. Not quite the same. 7 years changes the dark, the way it changes everything. But familiar. The same cedars, the same cold. I'm not going to tell you it gets easier exactly. I've heard people say that, and I'm not sure it's quite right. What I'd say is that it gets different. The grief that was everywhere in those first months, in the bedroom and the kitchen and the shop and the truck and everywhere you looked, starts eventually to find a shape, a size, something you can carry rather than something that carries you. But it takes time. More time than anyone tells you. More time than the stages suggest. And it takes some things that don't come naturally, especially to people of my generation who were raised to manage alone and not make their troubles other people's business. I'm telling you to make it other people's business. The right people. The ones who love you. The ones who can hold it. You don't have to be all right yet. You don't have to know how to do this. None of us knew how to do this. We just did it. One day at a time. One small decision at a time. One cup of coffee at a time. The cup is still warm. The fire's still going. You're not alone. I want to say one more thing before I close about the person you lost. Whatever you're feeling right now, whatever mix of grief and relief and anger and gratitude and the specific silence of a house that used to have another person in it, all of it is love. It's all the love, taking different forms. The anger is love that doesn't have anywhere safe to land yet. The relief is love that's glad the suffering is over. The grief is love that doesn't know what to do with itself now that the person it was given to is gone. All of it is love. And the love doesn't stop. I know that now, 7 years in. The love doesn't stop just because the person did. It finds new places to go, into the tending of the garden, into the conversations with the children, into the letters I write to the grandchildren that have her way of paying attention in them, into the soup made from the recipe card in her handwriting, into the blue sweater in the cedar chest, into the mornings in this chair with the green cup, when I talk to her the way I still do. She is still here in those ways. The love is still here. You will find your own version of that, your own green cup, your own cedar chest, your own mornings. Give yourself time. Give yourself the people who love you. Give yourself the full, complicated, messy grief without policing it or rushing it or performing something easier for the benefit of the people watching. You loved someone for a long time. That love is yours to carry now. It's a heavy thing and a precious thing, both at the same time. I know. I'm carrying mine. If anything I said today reached you, you can subscribe to walk with me a while longer. I read every comment. If you want to tell me about the person you lost, I'd like to hear. Tell me their name. Tell me something they used to do that you miss. I'll read it. I'll remember them. Take care of yourself. Don't rush anything. Let someone in. The fire's still going. I'll see you next time.